right, the inaugural podcast episode right now. The tentative name is Think Question Podcast, open for feedback. Already got some feedback from my first two guests here. Need to roll in some of the competency language, so I'll work on that. I'm Harrison Shure. I'm the Dean of Academics here at MA, and I'm excited to talk with two students who all have introduced themselves.
Nice to meet you. I'm Amrik. I'm a senior. Harrison, thank you so much for having us.
I'm Declan. I'm a junior, and Marin Academy. Thank you for having us.
Awesome. So I got to know both Declan and Amrik last year. We were on an AI committee that met for a lot of the year. It was a joint group of students and faculty, and it really shaped a lot of my thinking. So I'm excited to pick your brains on all things AI. It certainly changed a lot in the last year. But I thought we'd start off. You all are going to be leading a session at Conference on Democracy. And so I'd love for you all to talk a little bit about what COD is, your memories of it, why it's a special cornerstone here, and then a little bit about the session that you're leading.
Yeah, so COD has been a large tradition here at MA. It happens once a year, usually on a Wednesday in the middle of the week. We have the day off of regular school, and we kind of get to listen into different keynotes, sessions on things related to different themes. This year, our theme is around voice and democracy, and we're going to have multiple keynotes, different sessions, and students can kind of pick and choose what sessions they want to go to, and then there's usually the big keynotes where it's the entire school. Me and Declan have a big keynote coming up. We're going to be with CFO of OpenAI, Sarah Friar, so super excited for that. That's going to be one of the main keynote events. And we'll be able to moderate and have a bit of a Q&A with that.
Yeah, I think Amrik really covered all the bases there. But just my past two CODs have really been really awesome. I think the theme last year was justice and democracy, if that's right. And I remember my old English teacher came in, and that was definitely a really impactful session for me in terms of viewing the prison system. So I like to see how COD kind of changes the perspectives of the whole student body. I think it's a good tradition here.
Awesome. In this moment, I mean, it's a pretty cool time to be interviewing the CFO of OpenAI. So much change that's happening in the larger AI market right now. Is there anything you're most curious about? And I know you've got a number of questions that you're going to ask. What answers do you think she might have to some of our wonderings?
And this might be very specific to me, but just how quickly kind of AI and technology is changing. I mean, it's kind of, it's an exponential growth. So more technology kind of breeds more technology. And recently with Microsoft Maharana 1, just kind of the fear, but also kind of hope that AI and technology can bring. I'm most interested in how it can help solve the climate crisis or healthcare or engineering. And I really want to see AI used for good. And yeah, I like ChatGPT, OpenAI's model of kind of making it open for everyone. I really like the thesis there.
Yeah. And I think there's something particularly interesting about talking with CFO, especially during a time of record funding from OpenAI and in our current quarter that we're at with the new presidency and all of that. What might funding look like for an IPO? How can we position OpenAI before it goes public, and how will it be viewed as a brand and a global brand after it does do that, or if it does? I think we have a lot of cool questions. Like Declan was saying, there's a bunch we can relate to climate, education, democracy, and it's going to be great to hear what she has to say.
Awesome. You all are going to do a great job. And I'm sure whatever questions you come up with today will probably need to change in 3 weeks. The nature of the beast. So looking forward to that. So I'm going to bring it back to the AI committee that we had last year. And I'll be honest in sharing. I'll make a generalization here, which I think educators at first, and some still, are worried about the impact of AI, particularly on the connection between AI and learning or durable skills that we practice and teach here at MA. And I know that was a large portion of what we discussed last year. My thinking's evolved from there, but what were some of your main takeaways from the committee work last year and the discussions we had there?
Yeah, one of my big takeaways and kind of my biggest concerns in terms of education is the balance between using AI to get to a goal, but also making sure that all the work you do in between, you're still learning. Because at the end of the day, that's, the key goal of education. And for me in the past, doing some of the tedious work that nowadays you kind of just passively pass on to AI, to ChatGPT.
Are you saying, Declan, that some of your homework assignments are less fun than others?
I like, definitely some homework assignments are less fun, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're less important. Oftentimes the less fun homework assignments are more important. They're more important to projects. They're more important to learning. Synthesizing ideas by yourself is really important. And the ideas we practice at MA of applying scrutiny, being able to do that yourself in everyday life, knowing where something came from, knowing the author's viewpoints by yourself, being able to identify that without AI is very important. So yeah, I think even though it's less fun, doesn't necessarily mean it's less important.
Amrik, you might have just noticed Declan won the first unspoken challenge, which was bringing in the language of the competencies right into his answer. It was very authentic.
Stellar.
Yeah, outstanding. What about you?
I think for me, and what Declan was saying, when I was in that first AI committee meeting and hearing all the kids in the room show that they weren't really scared to use AI and they'd all use it in a myriad of ways, kind of prompted me to realize, well, like, how are we going to educate in the future so that we're not just doing tedious work all the time? Like, are we going to be handing packets, large readings, or are we going to have to adapt in the way that we are given information to learn, and what does homework look like in the future? That's kind of what it prompted me, being so ubiquitous across that room with so many kids using it in different ways, and honestly learning different tricks that I didn't know in that room was great. And then also wondering, like, well, with this committee, like, how do we share this past this room, outside of this room? I thought that was a huge takeaway for me.
Awesome. Thank you both. How has your use of AI, both in your classes, in life, changed over the last year?
I mean, at the end of the day, right now, the final product of ChatGPT will not get you an A at Marin Academy. Like, if you turn in ChatGPT's writing into your history essay, you will miss a lot of key points, a lot of things on the rubric that MA wants you to do. And so for me, it has been really helpful in terms of, summarizing things, finding key ideas, kind of finding details in text that I'm not able to find myself. But for me, where it's kind of scary is a lot of the time it spits out information that isn't true, or you feed it a text and even then you ask it. So I think making sure you know where the faults are in AI is really important. But there are tasks that are really useful to use it.
So interesting you say that. So maybe an emerging skill is actually identifying hallucinations.
Yeah.
And that makes me wonder, what practice do we need in reading, critical thinking, to be able, your teachers can identify it right away. They have experience, they have training. How can students do that?
I mean, when AI is most useful for me and when I'm able to identify when it's not telling the truth is when I did the work first myself. And that's honestly when AI becomes most useful, is reading the book myself, reading the chapter myself, knowing the general idea of what I want to say and having it kind of pinpoint good ideas, or do the hard kind of first step of, if I have writer's block, give me 5 ideas of a thesis or of an essay, and you can be like, oh, I really like that, and then expand it into the language that is comfortable for you and that you think will, generate a well-written essay.
Yeah, I think it's really changed the landscape of like that new skill, which is having scrutiny of maybe even AI as well. Definitely, like, if you don't have background knowledge in what you're trying to get it to generate, you are going to be super lost. And I think that's actually kind of how my thinking's changed. Honestly, I think me and a lot of other people have embedded a little bit more trust as we go on with AI. And I think that's a scary thing. I also think that's just going to be a fundamental change in how we view AI. Honestly, I've played around with multiple different forms of it. I mean, we're all used to thinking about ChatGPT and OpenAI, but I started using Claude, Perplexity, all these other different forms. And it's been interesting to learn how to utilize those in different ways, and discrepancies and different tasks and skills you can perform with different large language models.
Tell me a little bit about ways in which you use those tools.
Yeah, so Perplexity actually has access to all up-to-date and it can pull links, sources, quotes, which I found is super helpful. I kind of use it as a replacement for Google. I know people use ChatGPT kind of for like that more like humanities type style where you're like helping and asking for a thesis or analysis. I use Perplexity more as like Google because it does do that same thing. It pulls from that data. It has like all those updated facts. I don't use it as much for any of the sciences, for math or for any physics. It's an interesting way to stay updated on what's going on in the world, but also help me pull sources and quotes and research papers of a topic that I'm interested in.
Awesome. Have either of you used it in class so far? As in, has a teacher provided a tool, assignment, ways in which to use it there?
For my physics, interestingly,
are you playing with Snorkel right now?
We are playing with Snorkel.
Cool.
Yes, I think Snorkel is a great tool. I've actually seen
tell everybody a little bit about Snorkel.
So yeah, what you can do with Snorkel is you can take a video or picture of your work, and it'll kind of point out the discrepancies in your work, where you went wrong, maybe some errors, how to flesh out and explain your thinking, or it'll say you're right and you did it, which has been super interesting. I've seen the evolution of my own physics teacher. From the beginning of the year, it was more of pinpointing on the very first class why ChatGPT can't do a physics problem. And we actually fed it physics problems and it wasn't able to perform that task. And now I'm seeing it evolve into Snorkel, which is maybe only a few months later. And it's kind of like building a better relationship with AI as we go along. So it really shows that this is a really fast changing landscape.
Absolutely. I am blown away by Snorkel. And one of the things I like, it makes me think of something Declan said earlier. Declan, you brought up how AI is really forcing us to think differently about the product of learning or the results and the process of learning. And something I like about Snorkel is, in addition to getting the right answer, and I think when John showed me, there's a scale of 2 to 4 or 1 to 4, and 4 was you got the right answer and your explanation of your steps and your thinking was also on point, versus you could get a 2 out of 4 for just getting the right answer. It was a coach is what it looked like to me, and a good practice tool. Declan, what about you?
Yeah, I think the one instance I've used AI in class was in history. Caroline, my history teacher, she kind of provided us with what ChatGPT gave her when she asked it to kind of summarize civil rights. And what was interesting about that, and what kind of aligns with our goal at MA, is it gave not a very nuanced answer. It gave kind of what you'd expect it to give, names everyone's heard: Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks. She asked for a summary, so maybe it wasn't going to give harsh details. But yeah, I think that's interesting in terms of adding nuance. A lot of the times AI, because it's a language model, ChatGPT, it draws from popular opinions or what it thinks will be the right answer because it's the answer it's heard the most from all the data it's pulling from. And I think that's interesting in terms of adding nuance, where you really do need to dig deeper apart from AI to find those answers that aren't mainstream. If that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. All right, we're going to zoom out here. The year is 2035. You both are almost 30 years old. You're through with college. You're on to some other chapter of your life. And you come back to Marin Academy. It's about to be COD. And you spend a day following a student. What does it look like?
I think when I think of learning, I'm thinking binary of just the teaching in classroom and then the take home at home. And I'm thinking less like that with AI. It's going to be kind of more like dynamic, I would say. I definitely want to see AI and teaching be like completely synonymous. I mean, we have Snorkel, like you mentioned. Even with like Sora, like I can only imagine what it would be looking like in 2035. I don't imagine that they're going to be handing us large things to sift through anymore. And I envision a lot of our assessments and tests are a lot more oral based. I expect a lot more seminars, discussions, oral commentaries.
Oh, interesting. Tell me more why.
I think with how good it'll get, because I just know, you know that in 2035, it'll be stellar. If one were to like embed their full trust into artificial intelligence for like a homework or an assessment, that it'll be a little too good. We're going to have more seminars, things where it's fully reliant on you and your brain in the context of all your classmates as well in one sitting. I think AI will allow you to study for something like that. It'll allow you to help learn. And that's where I think in the classroom, it should be synonymous with learning. But when you get to those assessments, it should be a lot more human-based and a lot more vocal interaction.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and that's an interesting point that like technology will kind of evolve so far that we go back to oral history and kind of oral discussions. One point, and this might be a more vague answer, one point I would like to make, and I'm throwing my dad under the bus here, but he did not learn typing in school. He did not learn how to use a keyboard. And so to this day, he kind of still types with two fingers, and it's holding him back. Meanwhile, I
sorry, Dad.
Class. Yeah, sorry, Dad. Had a typing class since like third grade. And so, it's really fast now. And I think that might be part of a core curriculum is how to use AI effectively, whatever AI looks like in 2035. And I think that would be a good part of the curriculum is how to use AI effectively and ethically. And that might even be a sooner thing than we think. Because I think it really will become important, especially as AI grows exponentially with quantum computing. I think that might become core curriculum even in lower grade schools in the near future.
I don't know. I think it's a really ambitious goal. I think you have a lot of faith in our human nature, but I honestly think that if you want to think ethically about AI, it's a very tough problem to solve, especially with the way that brains are developed at such a young age and in a high school age. It leaves, for me, a lot of room for people to abuse that kind of power. And it being 2035, there's going to be a lot of power bestowed amongst so many younger students. Mm-hmm. And I think I definitely agree that AI is something that everyone should learn, but in the learning process of any take-home assessments or doing homework, that's a lot of power of the student, and to give them that responsibility to use it ethically is a huge responsibility. Mm-hmm. And yes, it should be taught, but unfortunately, I don't think we can fully rely on a student to do that.
What do you all think are the most enduring human qualities in an education? And you can speak from the I perspective, but what's going to endure through all of the changes, automation that's going to happen? I mean, I fully believe that pretty soon here, the writing may not be great yet. It's only going to get better. We know what it can produce across the board in terms of content. So what is it about developing adolescents, developing human beings that you think is most important to your education at MA?
It's got to be that curiosity, imaginative curiosity. Mm-hmm. I think even when you look at the nature of way people are using AI right now, they're asking it questions, mm-hmm. and they're honestly just trying to learn more. I think curiosity, the ability to ask nuanced questions, has been an enduring quality for me, and I know it's a quality for so many young people who are just growing up. You have questions. That's the reality. I think curiosity is a big one.
Yeah, adding on to the imaginative curiosity, I hope what stays relevant in schools is that it remains in-person social interaction, especially for the first 8 to 12 years of schooling. I mean, Amrik and I went through Zoom school, and that honestly removed a lot of the fun and a lot of the imaginative curiosity away from learning. I personally did not have as much of a motivation to go into my classes and learn as I do when I'm seeing my friends in person. And so I hope that's one thing that doesn't shift is the actual environment. Like Amrik said, I hope those oral commentaries would be in person. Yeah. But yeah, just exhibiting kind of a drive to learn. I hope that's something that doesn't change.
Love it. Declan, can I tell a story about you? Mm-hmm. We haven't talked about this, but you were in an advanced bands concert, and the night that I came, you were having a hard time with your amp. Mm-hmm. Something was going on. I didn't fully... The pedal, something was wrong, mm-hmm. and you rocked and rolled your way through it. Mm-hmm. We know the AI produced music, beats, so on and so forth is pretty good, mm-hmm. and only going to get better. There was something really human about watching you. Not that I liked watching you struggle. That's mm-hmm. not what I'm saying. But you pushed through. You weren't thrown off. It wasn't perfect. That was so human. And I appreciated seeing and experiencing that. And I don't know that AI is going to be able to be that spontaneously flawed.
No, live music, making music not on a grid, making something feel natural is something that I hope AI will never achieve. Because live music, human-made art, classic books, poetry, songwriting, I think those are things I really hope AI doesn't change or can't replace. I hope it can't replace humanity. Because especially for me, a lot of music, like it feels as though it goes straight to the soul. And I hope that's something AI can't mimic, because I mean, connecting the COD theme of kind of voice and creativity, I think that's something that is unique to humanity that hopefully machines will never be able to mimic.
Amrik, you're a musician too. Thoughts?
I am. I agree.
Have you played around with the AI tools and made some stuff?
It's too good. I'm not gonna lie. It's too good. It's honestly amazing what it can do. I mean, I've seen a lot of people play around with creating their own music and using AI's music, and I think that's the coolest thing. I think when humans are going to be able to interact with AI in that way, where they're like both kind of creating media, I think that's going to be stellar. I think in the context of MA, that just made me think of like, we need to have more like media creation related projects that students can create. I mean, I'm just looking at senior speeches today. I mean, that is fundamentally a human thing about MA, the concerts, our art, our photography. I think those are all important factors. It's what makes learning at MA unique and what makes us humans unique. And I think that's something that's going to be important in the next few years.
This has been so awesome. Before we finish up here, I've got 3 rapid fire questions to finish on. You ready? Mm-hmm. Awesome. Declan, you first. If your homework could do itself, but only in rhyming couplets, would you take the deal?
No, I would not.
Great. Amrik?
I would take it. I want to see how it rhymes physics.
Love that. Second question. If aliens landed at Marin Academy, what's the first thing you'd show them?
Probably cafe food.
I would say I would show it the library. It's bustling in there.
A bustling library. Aliens would love it there. Last question. If you could swap brains with any person, past or present, for a day, who would you pick and why?
Basic answer, but Albert Einstein, after studying his brain in neuroscience, it's really a marvel.
I would go my little sister. I'm just curious what she's doing all day.
Wow. All right. We've got call outs to family members from both participants here today. Awesome. Thank you so much. This has been really inspiring and thought-provoking for me. I'll have more questions, and I can't wait to see you all in action at COD.
Thank you so much.
Harrison.